After clawing at this manga throughout my middle school and high school careers, I finally had the opportunity to finish Claymore. Now, is this really the hidden gem everyone thinks it is, or was there a reason for this being a slept-on manga in the back of Shonen Jump's magazine? To be blunt, Claymore has very obvious strengths and weaknesses. Immediately, its art and its aesthetic is probably one of my favorites in a manga. The gray look of Claymore is as serene as it is lifeless, giving us one of the most quiet and depressing fantasy stories ever made. Saying that, the series is actually really loud. Monsters known as Yoma plague the land, and they feast on human beings, all the while taking the form of their victims, letting them hide in plain sight. They would take on the memories of a single person and live with you as if they're your mother, brother, sister, or even your father, with every village being none the wiser, turning your favorite priest, farmer boy, or even an orphan into a bloodthirsty, murderous cannibal that will tear you apart and turn you into its plaything. And the only thing to stop this would be the use of a claymore. Not just the sword, but one of the half-human, half-monster women that are called upon to cut the Yoma down to size. In short, they're monsters who hunt other monsters. These warriors are cold, calculated, and cunning, and they can see through the camouflage of these demons in a matter of seconds. No matter how beautiful these women are, they are perfect for one thing and one thing only, and that is killing. They show no remorse to other humans because they are disconnected from humanity, all thanks to the Yoma blood running in their veins. So what exactly are these women? Humans or demons? Struggling with this identity crisis would be one of the biggest aspects of the story. And one person in question fighting with this identity on a day-to-day basis is our main character, Claire. She would live for the sole purpose of killing the all-powerful demon Priscilla. For all intents and purposes, this is a revenge story, and reading to see this final battle is something to look forward to. Alongside all of Claymore's other redeeming qualities, it does some amazing things, not only for the fantasy genre itself, but manga as a whole, with some of the best monster designs I've ever seen, letting these creatures come to life in the most disturbing and unique way I've seen. Monsters such as the legendary male claymores that used to reign the battlefield in history long ago, that would turn into a mutant frog spider out of your nightmares, giving him a tongue that allows him to immediately and efficiently eat away at the frail bodies of all of these women. And speaking of which, the female monsters are scary in their own right. I can't show a lot of them on the screen because they look pretty damn crazy, but for instance, we would have the Abyss Feeder, which are a bunch of zombie-like claymores that have been experimented on, who only hunt on instinct and will kill anything in sight with their insane regenerative abilities, making them practically immortal. It's damn near impossible to kill them. And easily the best design would be Islay, who has a centaur-like form with a few changes. He'd be able to mold his body parts and limbs into different weapons, giving him arrows that home in on opponents, and he can create great swords and a shield to completely stomp out anyone in front of him. The creativity here is literally next level, and the creativity does not stop here. Literally, it does things that break the shonen norms by giving all of these Claymore warriors a power system unlike anything you've ever seen before. You can get new abilities by cutting off a Claymore's limbs and attaching it to your own body. After getting her arm cut off, Claire would get the ability of the quick sword technique by using another warrior's arm. This was not only interesting, but it was an incredibly fresh take on how to approach fighting in manga. And the abilities here are deranged. We'd have a Claymore that would literally grind her face against the dirt by moving her body so awkwardly. It's impossible to attack her due to the force that she applies from her head all the way down to the rest of her body. She would have a disgusting fighting style. And even with it being so weird and absurd, it would allow her to be the strongest Claymore in her era. These are the kinds of crazy ideas that you can expect from every fight in this series. And these characters in battle aren't the only ones that stand out. Claire would stand out in her own right. The Claymore manga is a unique experience by giving us a really nice, mysterious character out of Claire, which is completely different from what we're used to when it comes to all of the badass male characters we usually get. Of course, how could I not mention Guts in this video with it being about fantasy, let alone Asterit from Ubelblot. The writing here is literally at a master class. But is it really worth all of your precious time? Before we get into that, there's a lot we have to understand about Claire. You see, she would become the very thing that she's killing. A monster who hunts other monsters, which is pretty familiar when it comes to storytelling. Yet there's a really interesting approach when it comes to Claire's character. She most certainly comes across as an inhuman being unresponsive, shut off, and quiet. Yet she is still a human being. And emotions, or lack thereof, are still there deep inside of her. She would hunt and kill every single Yoma she comes across, even from villagers who hate the very idea of claymores, which makes her intentions very unclear. She would go to a town and kill a Yoma, only for a boy to start gravitating towards her. She would have little to no idea why, yet this boy would take an immediate interest in her. You see, she would kill this Yoma, but the entire time, the same Yoma that she killed was actually his brother that he was living with. And with this boy's brother being the Yoma that she killed, he would no longer have a family. This boy's name is Rocky, and he would be left with nothing, leaving him to only follow Claire around. At first, she would only see him as nothing more than a nuisance, and for some reason, slowly over time, she would let him travel with her. The relationship between Claire and Rocky is very subtle. Claire would have killed the boy's brother because he was a Yoma, but in the past, Claire's entire family would have been killed by a Yoma that was disguising itself as her brother, just like Rocky's family. Both Claire and Rocky would have had their families killed by a Yoma disguising itself as their brothers. And at the end of it all, Claire's village and Rocky's village would think that they are Yoma. Claire and Rocky would not only experience the same exact rejection from their villages, but they would also experience the same loss of having their families killed by their brothers. Claire and Rocky would be the same, which is why their relationship would be so tight-knit. After losing her brother, Claire would have Rocky follow her around. This is ultimately because she understands Rocky. She sees herself in Rocky due to their similar life experiences, and she sees the brother that she lost in him. Both Claire and Rocky would simply be filling each other's voids. And with Rocky filling Claire's void, he would help her come closer to the humanity that she lost. And with Claire being a stoic mute, there's a lot of moments that come few far in between where you need to think about and dissect her character to truly understand her real motives, let alone her feelings. For instance, Claire would finally have the opportunity to take down a voracious eater, and upon meeting her other Claymore teammates, her teammate Helen would be surprised that she would bring a child with her on this mission. And so she would immediately assume that Rocky would be Claire's plaything. Without a second thought, Claire would try to kill Helen. With her being so cold and relaxed, you would think this is merely because she just likes Rocky that much, but there's a lot more to this than anyone would realize. You see, in the past, Claire would have been the plaything to another Yoma. Claire knows exactly what it's like to be someone's plaything. Helen insinuating this would only mean that Claire is no different than a Yoma, in that she would be treating Rocky the same way this Yoma treated her. Helen's comment would have made Claire's trauma resurface and turn it into anger, because that is the very last thing she would ever do to Rocky. Life experiences and the trauma that the Yoma cause in this cruel world inevitably pushes everyone to the brink. Multiple characters would suffer from the same story and the same wounds. Claire versus Ophelia is practically my favorite moment in the entire series, because it not only says a lot about the world of Claymore, but the people in it. Ophelia is a Claymore that is obsessed with strength, and she would always go out of her way to fight the strongest awakened ones. She would do this so that she could claim revenge against Priscilla, just like Claire. Ophelia and Claire would share the same dream, and almost the same story. But there is a stark difference between the two. When meeting Ophelia for the first time, Ophelia would do nothing more than play with Claire and Rocky's lives, mainly to show how powerless Claire really is. Ophelia would go as far as to breaking the #1 rule for all Claymores, that being to never kill a human being. And to be honest, you couldn't expect her to care less because those lives are beneath her and her ambitions. She would immediately pounce onto Claire and torture her, only to cut off her legs and try to kill Rocky before her very eyes. And if that wasn't enough, she would play along to be her ally, then throw Rocky right at an awakened one to feed him to this treacherous monster. And with Claire trying to save him, she would only hold her back and slam her face into the ground. Why is Ophelia so filthy? Why is she so evil? This is all rooted from her deep obsession with strength. She would believe that fighting to protect something is nothing more than an illusion of the weak. In her eyes, Claire and Rocky are nothing more than lambs to the slaughter. Claire would try her hardest to protect Rocky, yet Ophelia would be able to kill him just for the fun of it. She torments them because she has been tormented by life itself. In her past, Priscilla would have destroyed her entire village and killed her brother. During the chaos, Ophelia's brother would fight Priscilla all by himself and make sure that Ophelia is safe by telling her to run away. And he would only die trying to protect her. This is why she would think that fighting to protect something is foolish, because her brother died for it. And this is exactly why she would play with Claire and Rocky's lives. Claire would fight to protect Rocky, and Rocky would fight to protect Claire. Rocky would be no different than Ophelia's dead brother. Rocky would fight to protect Claire the same way Ophelia's brother would fight to protect her. Yet Ophelia's brother died. And this is exactly what Ophelia was trying to show Claire, that her weakness would get Rocky killed, just like her brother. Ophelia would see her dead brother in Rocky the same way Claire does. But there is a stark difference between the two of these characters, and that is their humanity. Claymores are known for throwing away their humanity when they can no longer control themselves. After all, they are half human, half Yoma. Whenever Claire begins to transform into a demon, Rocky would be there to comfort her and save her. Yet Ophelia would have no one. She would be all alone, with her brother nowhere in sight. To set the record straight, Claire is human, while Ophelia is inhuman. Claire has Rocky, which prevents her from becoming a demon, while Ophelia has no one. And unfortunately, she would become a monster. The very same monster that killed her brother. This fight goes to show what happens to the majority of most Claymores. They not only become the very monsters that they're sworn to kill, but they leave themselves in isolation and loneliness, which lets their trauma get the best of them, which repeats the cycle of not only everyone killing each other, but also the fact that they kill themselves. These are the moments when Claymore is at its best. We begin to not only understand more about our characters and their inner struggles, but how the world chews them up and spits them out. When it's not blowing our minds with its character nuances and commentary on humanity, it pulls on your heartstrings with high-stakes fights that keep you on the edge of your seat. The very fight with Rigaldo the Lion is one that never leaves my mind whenever I think of this series, because of just how intimidating and powerful all of their enemies really are. There is a sense of helplessness and dread that is hard to replicate here. But Claymore at its worst becomes Dragon Ball Monster Hunter with female leads, which is all in part by the latter half of the story honestly feeling like it's missing a lot of its depth in writing that made me love this story to begin with, all in favor of immense big battles that don't really leave much of an impression, because every single fight starts to feel a little weightless, especially when it's the climax of the story. And it's sad to see this amazing writing become such an afterthought. Yes, on paper it seems like all the action would keep my attention, and unfortunately it does the exact opposite. I mean, after all, the action is amazing, but it comes to a point where every fight is predictable. Miria, think of a plan and we can take him down. Okay, let's do this. Let's team up and then abuse their weakness. Oh my god, this new enemy is transforming into a new ugly creature. And the manga begins to just lose all of its stakes that made it so special in the very beginning. Every fight turns into this, and it's extremely disappointing. I guess it's the shonen standard, call it what you want, but some way, somehow, characters that you 100% thought were dead somehow miraculously survive. And at some point, you may just get tired with seeing all of this endless monster fighting. Gotta say, I love the action, and it definitely works for an anime, but when it comes to reading, it's definitely mind-numbing after a while. And don't get me wrong, there are amazing monster fights and crazy designs to come along with it, but how predictable it becomes makes it kind of hard to recommend. There are very good reasons to want to see this, but I will admit the secrets that this manga has did not really satisfy me. The idea of the very organization that creates claymores being villains and pulling the strings to a way bigger plot. I mean, really, who didn't see that coming? The answers to all of the questions that this manga gives us are definitely interesting, but they don't move me in the slightest. Like, what does a claymore's body actually look like? Why are there only female claymores? And yes, there are male ones, they do explain this in the story, but more importantly, they dig into the real reason as to why the organization are making claymores to begin with. And I hate to say it, but none of these answers to our questions were really satisfying. This manga to me is always going to be a memorable classic, and I think we can all agree on that. Claymore as a manga definitely brought me down to reality a bit, and I could understand why it wasn't really talked about that much. But does that really take away from all of the amazing qualities that it does have? Adrenaline-fueled fights, in-depth character dynamics, an amazing aesthetic to go along with it, alongside some of the best monster designs in a manga. Claymore is definitely worth checking out, but this is a manga I don't see a lot of people reading from beginning to end. Not by a long shot. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope you guys check out our other manga reviews on your screen right now. You're not going to be disappointed, and if you want to help keep this channel alive, make sure you check out our Patreon in the description below.